I'm just a man. An imperfect one with needs, wants, and flaws by the bushel. Fragile vessel in which to place potentially world-ending power. Perhaps it would be better to not shape such a vessel.
Oh God, here goes. I lost all feeling from my head to my toes. You said some shit that I can't let go. So just...
Hey guys, it's DVD Gamer Girl here. Welcome back to my channel. So today I have an interesting video idea on ranking each of the Baldur's Gate 3 companions in terms of their emotional maturity. I actually got this idea from one of you guys in the comments, so thank you so much for your comment and for, being the inspiration behind this video. It was a little bit hard, honestly, to come up with the tier names because, I feel like there's so many nuances when it comes to emotional maturity, but I've done my best. So for S tier, I have deeply emotionally mature. A tier is mature with room to grow. B tier is work in progress. C tier is emotionally rigid or guarded. And D tier is emotional disaster. I know it's a little bit nuanced, but I will just explain why I'm putting them in each category, but just think of them as S through D tier basically. And for some of these characters, I've also done different versions of them because, for example, if you compare Spawn Astarion at the end of the game compared to Ascended Astarion, there are super different levels of emotional maturity, so it's not fair to rate Astarion into one category because those two versions of him are so different. That being said, let's start with regular Spawn Astarion. So this is Astarion who chooses not to ascend. So with Astarion, honestly, he feels very emotionally stunted in the beginning for sure because he's very manipulative. He never really tells you how he feels. He kind of is using you to a degree to get to Cazador. But throughout the course of the game, he definitely really grows as a person and he grows in his emotional maturity significantly. He starts to value his independence, he starts to understand love, and I feel like he starts to morally align with some of the better choices. He doesn't have this kind of inherent evil quality anymore that he used to have. And in my opinion, the reason he goes along with so many of the evil choices in the beginning and he approves of them is because he feels like he's been wronged in his life because he was basically abused by Cazador for his entire life. So of course he's going to be having some leftover anger towards the world, you know what I mean? But I feel like over the course of the game, he grows, especially if you romance him. He learns love, he learns companionship and friendship, and he doesn't use sex as a manipulation tactic anymore, and it's different. So considering him at the end of the game, I'm going to put him in mature with room to grow. I still don't think he's necessarily at the max maturity. He's still learning, but it's come a long way from the beginning of the game. Okay, next let's talk about Ascended Astarion. Ascended Astarion is just a complete nightmare, honestly. He's complete red flags, an emotional disaster. There's absolutely no maturity. He looks down upon his previous self and he was just I was nothing back then. And all he cares about is power. He cares about manipulation. God forbid you're in a romance with him when he's ascended and you become his spawn. He will not let you break up with him, and he's very angry, very reactive anytime that you bring up Cazador. He is just so narcissistic and consumed with himself that, there's no maturity there whatsoever, in my opinion. Okay, now let's talk about regular Gale. Okay, regular Gale, he's interesting because he is kind of a mix of emotionally mature but also not. He's emotionally mature in the sense that he's always talking about how much he loves you. He's very open with his feelings, etc. He's vocal about his opinions. But I feel like he's very emotionally immature in the sense that he's still very insecure, and especially with, the orb inside of him and him threatening to explode it every now and then. I feel like, I don't know, in the romance, particularly with him, there were times where he just came across as really immature. So for example, like after the first night that you sleep with him, if he asks you, you know, how it was and you answer anything less than perfect, he gives me like a very emotionally volatile vibe. So says, you know, you shouldn't really be saying that to someone who has like an explosive thing on them type of thing. I don't know. It was just like very weird what he said. I think I'm going to put him in work in progress because I feel like he does a good job with opening up and just like being vulnerable, but he still has his moments where he kind of like is like, okay, I'm just gonna kill myself right now, or just stuff like that. Like I feel like he has a lot of room to grow. God Gale, I'm kind of debating whether I should also put him in emotional disaster. I think I will. Because, well, you know what? I'm going to put him in emotionally rigid or guarded. I wouldn't really say that he's a disaster as much as Ascended Astarion. Because with God Gale, there are still some moments where you can see like his old self at the end of the game in the epilogue. Let's say that you decide not to ascend with him in the very last moment. He'll just be like, well, you do a great job of bringing the heavens here down to earth. And he's still in love with you, and I find that really sweet. But you can definitely see that he grows a huge ego, like he thinks of himself as better than anybody else when he becomes a god. He like looks down on mortals, and he becomes very vain with people, you know, putting up temples for him and stuff like that. Like he wants people to worship him. He becomes the god of ambition, and his morality also becomes very questionable because he doesn't actually care anymore if he's supporting good or evil intentions as long as he's supporting ambition. So I feel like he loses a lot of the maturity he had because before he became a god, he really did care about if he was doing good in the world or not. Next, let's talk about Shadowheart, who decides not to kill Nightsong and does not become a Dark Justiciar, so she betrays Shar. I feel like Shadowheart is a character who comes across really emotionally guarded in the beginning. Like she has a lot of walls up and she doesn't trust you very much. She doesn't want to tell you very much. But as you progress in the game and she starts to trust you more and more, I feel like she opens up and she becomes a lot more vulnerable. And at the moment that she decides to betray Shar, she does struggle with that a lot emotionally, but I feel like it, you know, contributes a lot to her character growth. And she starts to kind of more go for the kinder, good moral paths, like starting at that point. And generally, like throughout the game, she's always more on the morally good side. So I don't know if I would say necessarily that she's deeply emotionally mature, but I would say maybe mature with room to grow. I don't know. She's like maybe one of the ones I could put in deeply emotionally mature, but I don't think it's perfect yet. Okay, now for Dark Justiciar Shadowheart, I'm also gonna put her in emotionally rigid and guarded. Because she does kind of blindly follow Shar once she kills the Nightsong. Like she becomes really, really obsessed with serving Shar. Literally everything is about Shar. And if you have a romance with her at that point, she basically is just, you know, like, don't ask me to say that I love you, but, you know, we can have some fun type of thing. So the whole dynamic of the romance changes and you kind of get pushed out. Like all of her walls go back up. Any emotional or romantic progress that you made with her just goes backwards, I feel like. So she definitely becomes very guarded and very ambitious in terms of her mission to Shar. But it doesn't make her emotionally mature. Like it's just like, I'll just blindly do whatever Shar wants. And even in the scene where she's making a decision whether to kill her parents or not, when Shar is telling her to do it, she says, I feel like I lost sight of what was good a long time ago. I'm just gonna blindly follow what Shar is telling me to do. So I feel like she has lost that maturity in this path. Okay, next let's talk about Karlach. So Karlach, I mean, she's emotionally mature in the sense that she's trying to enjoy life. She tries to make the best of most situations. Like she doesn't let it, you know, kind of bog her down. That being said, I do feel like Karlach uses humor as a coping mechanism far too often. Like she does have, you know, like an occasional outburst, like after you kill Gortash. But apart from that, she's generally always joking around like a little bit too much. So she kind of reminds me of like, you know, the friend that always acts fine but is actually falling apart inside, but they don't show it. And I feel like a big part of being emotionally mature is being able to also voice your feelings and talk it out with people. So I feel like she doesn't really have the ability to do that. So I'm gonna put her in work in progress because she does have certain aspects that feel more mature, but overall I feel like she's a little bit too, you know, guarded and using humor as a coping mechanism. Okay, let's talk about Wyll. Wyll is very self-righteous, almost to a fault, I would say, but overall, he is definitely one of the most mature companions that there is. His romance is very, very Disney prince, like very solid, stable. It gives emotionally stable for sure. He never really loses his cool. He is always thinking things through very logically, I feel like. And overall, he tries to do good in the world. I mean, he does have a little bit of an ego and I'm a hero, or I want to be a hero type of mentality. But overall, honestly, like I found Wyll to be one of the most stable people. Like all of the other characters, like sometimes have these really volatile moments, and Wyll didn't really have that. And it's also why I really like his romance. I mean, people call him boring, I feel like, because of his emotional stability to a degree, which just means that he is mature. That being said, I think he does have room to grow. I feel like he tunnels in too much sometimes on trying to be a hero, and he loses sight of like the bigger picture, you know, so I think he also still has room to grow for sure. Okay, now I'm gonna talk about Lae'zel in the path that she, you know, ends up deciding that Vlaakith is evil and she loses her religiosity towards Vlaakith. I think in the beginning of the game, Lae'zel is very immature. Like, she is really, really dedicated to her cause, but she's very blindly following it, and she looks down on everybody else, and she only cares about herself. Like, she comes across very selfish, and I don't find that to be very emotionally mature. But as her eyes open kind of to the world around her, and she kind of learns and understands like Vlaakith's actual intentions, and she turns her back on Vlaakith, I feel like she does develop a lot of emotional maturity. And in the romance with you, she starts to open up to you, and, you know, she starts to care about you, which is a side of herself that she has trouble showing in general with people. I think I'm gonna put her in work in progress because overall she does still feel very young to me. Like, she's a little bit too, how do you say this? Like, she's a little bit too gung-ho about things that she doesn't know very much about, and she's a little bit hyper-focused on certain aspects, and I feel like she doesn't really like deeply understand the other characters or care to get to know them, whereas like some of the other characters have better dialogues about each other than Lae'zel does about other people. So work in progress, I feel like, is good for her. For Lae'zel that actually continues to serve Vlaakith, I'm gonna put her in probably emotional disaster, because if she continues to serve Vlaakith, she does not open her eyes to literally anything else. Like, I feel like she is so hyper-focused on her dedication. I think she keeps the mentality that emotional vulnerability is a weakness, and I feel like that's very, very bad for Lae'zel. So the character growth like just does not happen if you go down this route. So I'm gonna put her in emotionally disaster because she was very emotionally stunted to begin with, and if you go down this path, she basically stays that way. Now let's talk about Halsin. Honestly, I feel like Halsin is deeply emotionally mature. And I'm not really saying that because of his age, but he just seems like he's always trying to do the right thing. He sees both good and evil. His polyamory, honestly, like in a way almost contributes to me thinking that he's emotionally mature, because he sees your relationship as very important to him, and he expresses this too, but he also says, you know, like, I understand whatever you want to do. Like, if you choose to break up with him, or if you choose to, you know, be polyamorous with him, or whatever you choose to do, he's always very, very respectful, and he's very mature about it. And at the end of the game, you know, he takes on the mission to go and help all these children, etc. And that comes across as very emotionally mature to me as well. And when you talk to him in the epilogue and you catch up on everything, it's just, he just gives me like really kind of older, mature energy. Like, he has a lot of experience, he's seen a lot of things, knows a lot of things in the world, and I just think that he's pretty much peaked as far as his emotional maturity is going to go. Jaheira, I'm going to say the same thing. I also find her deeply emotionally mature. I feel like she's very grounded. She's very hardworking. She's very dedicated to her cause, and she is a really good leader for her people. So I think those things do really make her come across as mature, and she likes to give advice, and I feel like she's kind of as the mom of the group. Like, at least that's how it feels to me. Okay, Minsc is, I'm sorry, but he's like an emotional disaster. No hate against him, but I mean, he definitely does not have much of an emotional capacity. I don't think I really need to explain more than that. I feel like it's fairly obvious that Minsc is not very emotionally mature. I mean, he's a great, fun character, but it's not like you have any kind of deep dialogues or deep conversations with him really at any point. Okay, Minthara, I think I'm gonna put her in emotionally rigid and guarded, because even if you do romance her and she opens up to you, she just never really grows out of her current mentality, I feel like. She's pretty emotionally detached. And even in her, you know, more romantic or redemption arc, she doesn't really become very expressive or empathetic. I think she just doesn't really connect with people very well. She's not an emotional disaster because she is very calm and composed. I mean, there's no doubting that whatsoever. There's not very many breaks in her composure, but I just feel like she does not really emotionally grow as a character. Anyways, so let me know if you guys agree with these assessments, or if you have a completely different point of view. Like, I would love to hear your guys' thoughts. Remember to like, comment, and subscribe if you enjoy my content. I hope you guys are having a great week, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye, guys.